Hi, my name's DJ Clark and I'm here in Tunis, Tunisia in a little studio at a World Press Photo Multimedia Reporting Change workshop. I'm here with Matt Ford and we're making some short videos for the connected learning. Matt, we've talked about audio, we've talked about basic equipment. Now I want really to talk about the rest of the equipment in regard to shooting video. Starting with the bag, what do you use to carry the stuff? Because that's really important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the time I'm traveling, flying to the location. So, I've got this think tank one that's built for international flight standards and, basically can hold my entire camera kit. I can change it around depending on what the shoot is going to be. Sure. And the nice thing about it is that it has a nice lock on the front. So when I'm in the hotel room and I go out for dinner, right, I can just lock it down. And it's also got a nice little section on the back so that I can take this out and chain it to the bed.
Fantastic.
And it really deters people from wanting to get into my camera equipment. It also makes for a secret pouch for the extra backup hard drive in case you have a run-in with police or military who
Sure.
want to erase your data.
Okay, and I use a backpack most of the time, and I try to always only have one backpack where I get everything in it. So this is the backpack I use. I've been through a few, but getting it right is really important because it's got to be comfortable, because sometimes you've got to carry it for long periods of time. And if you want the flexibility that photojournalists like, that we want to be mobile, we want to be able to get to places, getting that backpack as compact and as lightweight as possible is really important. So within the bag, let me just sort of ask you, what are the kind of key things, additional equipment to the basics that I talked about? In the first video, we talked about just really having a DSLR camera as a basic and a tripod. What other bits of equipment would you carry with you?
Well, first, I never hold a camera like that when I'm shooting video, where it's naked and doesn't have some kind of stabilization. I just can't get the steady shot that I'm familiar with when I was shooting video. So sometimes I'll use a tripod. Most of the times I'm using a tripod. Sometimes I'm using a monopod like we talked about in a previous video. But if I really need to go all day long, being handheld, following somebody around, or doing a variety of shots where I have to keep moving, I upgrade to like a larger rig like this. Sure. So the key thing about this is there's a lot of options for points on it. So I got places for my hands, place to keep it, inside my armpit here. And I can still get up here. I can, adjust pretty much everything on the camera while keeping multiple points on my body and staying steady. It's also really easy to quickly drop down and get low angle shots, yeah, or, pivot and get, a higher shot. And it's also got these rails on it. So with the rails, it allows you to mount audio equipment, monitors, all sorts of other accessories, depending on what you're doing that day.
Like we talked in the audio session, that this is where you'd put your shotgun microphone or your mixer or your additional sound recorder. It can all mount onto the rig.
Yeah, if I'm following somebody around, I've got this rig, I've got the audio recorder, and then I've got the wireless packs mounted onto this.
Okay. Yeah. Now this is quite an expensive option, but if you're looking for something a bit cheaper and more affordable, this is just basically a flash bracket. And if I open it out, just do a couple of clicks here, and then I can mount my camera. Oops, am I here? I can mount my camera onto the flash bracket. It doesn't give me as much stabilization as yours does. This is a very sort of simple option, but it does allow me a couple of things. One, that I can hold it from here, and particularly if I've got a flip out screen, which means I can go quite low. And also I can mount a microphone here, a sound mixer and other things. And it does provide a little bit more stability, not quite as much as this. As you said, it doesn't have the additional points, but it's going to make me a steadier shot.
Absolutely.
Okay, what else do you have in the bag there?
All right, let's open her up. Well, the first one that's already out, and this is the monitor. So, the higher you go up on these cameras, there's no flip out screens. There's not a lot of options for viewing it if you're going high or low. Or maybe you're on an interview and you want to see a little more detail to make sure that everything in the shot is dead on. So in that case, what I'll do is I'll mount this onto the rig. It's got the eyepiece, but this can also come off and you can use it just as a monitor. You know, it's full HD, very clear.
So a much bigger monitor, much clearer sound. And one of the problems we have with these cameras is it's difficult to focus, and this is going to make things easier, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, a slightly cheaper option if you want to try to find a better way of getting focus is just to buy one of these viewfinders. And these viewfinders come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and at different prices. But they fit on the back of the camera, the back of the viewer here. And from that, if I try to focus here, I'm going to be able to see much clearer on a moving subject. So if I have something moving in bright light, it's going to be very difficult for me to focus on the back. But with this, no problem.
And the nice thing about those is that's also an extra point. So if you're keeping your arms in and you're putting that up against your eye, you're going to have a steadier shot than if you're holding it out in front of you looking at the viewfinder. Sure. The only thing I don't like about that is, you know, shots shot at eye level tend to get boring after a while, so you need to make the conscious effort to move around and get at different angles. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to show?
Yeah, so one of the troubles with shooting with DSLR is that you have to shoot at a shutter speed of 1/50th or 1/60th, depending on what frames per second you're using. And when you do that, it takes one of your exposure tools away, if you're familiar with photography, especially in bright light.
So photographers like to shoot wide apertures. I mean, it's one of the great things about photography is that we can create a depth by focusing on what we want to focus on and throwing the back out of focus. But in bright light in video, that's very difficult, right?
It's very difficult, yeah. So what I tend to do is if it's on a bright day or if in a place that's getting a large source of light is I use a variable ND filter. And with that, I'm able to create more of that depth of field in a bright light situation.
And again, I have my one here. ND filters are a crucial part of our kit in order to get the kind of look and feel that we want. And you know, they come again at different price ranges, but it's important that if you've got an expensive lens, that you think, well, I wouldn't put a cheap one in front of that. So try and match the lens with the quality of the ND filter, otherwise you take out the advantages of having a good quality lens.
Absolutely.
Okay, anything else that you have in here?
I've got lots of toys in here. So the other thing I usually bring with me is intervalometers, because sometimes you get in a situation where you think a nice time lapse might be really good, whether it's moving cars or a beautiful sunrise or sunset. So, you know, plugging in one of these, saying your interval, and then letting it go while you have a drink in the room or something is a nice way to pick up an extra shot at the start or end of a day.
And this is where the Nikon users are laughing at the Canon users, right? Because they have it built in.
I know.
But for those of us who are shooting Canon and we don't, we have to have one of these. And it allows us to do those fantastic time lapses that you see on a lot of the multimedia pieces these days.
Absolutely.
And as you said, it also gives us a break because we let this do the work while we go and take a drink or do something else.
It's perfect.
Okay, let me also just talk about lighting a little bit, because it's useful to have in the bag, particularly for interviews, a couple of extra options. Now, I like to use daylight where possible, because with a good daylight, you're going to get a nice, clean, soft light on the subject. But having a couple of extra lights allows you to do a rim light, or if possible, possibly a fill light. So these are very cheap little LED lights that gives me that option. And combined with, and these are little Chinese tripods, I'm not sure if you can buy them elsewhere.
All the cheapest toys.
They are, but these are fantastic. These are really great. So they're called lollipods, and they simply jump out like this, and we're very quick to be able to set it up. They're incredibly lightweight. They do break easily, so I have a few of them. And I can stick a light on here. I can stick a microphone on here. Anything really that I need a bit of extra help. It's not strong enough to take a camera unless it's like a point of view camera. But there you go. I've just dropped that on. I screw it on, and away I'm going. I've got an extra light. Gives me a bit more option. Bad. Okay. Anything else that you have?
Yeah, the one thing I tend to bring around, and this sort of becomes a game with me on a shoot, is a GoPro or some kind of portable camera. And I've got a variety of rigs, head mounts, chest mounts, and the creative ones, the suction cup mount. And usually it's if there's some kind of car ride, or if I'm on a boat or anything that's moving and it's hard to set up with a normal camera. I'll try and put this in a creative place and get a shot that I wouldn't otherwise be able to get.
Sure. So the point of view camera is like something that we all carry these days, because it gives us the chance to get a shot that we wouldn't normally worry about, we wouldn't be able to get. We can put it on somebody's helmet, we can attach it to a car, or all sorts of things, and these things are virtually indestructible. So if it gets a bash or it falls down from wherever it is, we don't have to worry too much.
And I have in the past destructed them by landing them in the drink or other things, but by human error and my own mistake. And when you do, I mean, that's what's great. You can put these in tremendous risk, and then if you have to replace them, it's not nearly as bad as replacing your DSLR camera.
Yeah. Okay, I have a few more things that I want to talk about. A macro lens. A macro lens is really important for getting detail, something that video people need a lot of, particularly if they're wanting to make their videos a little bit more creative. I also have a little focus finder here, which is great for doing interviews. Now, I tend to have to do a lot of interviews by myself and shooting at the same time. Now, when you're trying to talk to somebody, it's really, really distracting if I have to lean over and change the focus. So if I'm kind of leaning and change the focus, whereas with this thing, I can very quickly focus. I can have it on my lap, and I can focus as we're doing the interview without really sort of distracting the person I'm talking to.
It's very handy. I want one of those.
Okay.
This is a very simple thing, but it saves you a lot of money in the long run. I load up on rechargeable batteries. You know, the end of my shooting day is always putting out a power strip and recharging everything, because a lot of these toys, you know, run off of AAA batteries, and if you're constantly buying new ones, you're wasting a lot, and that money adds up after a while. So, you know, stocking up on rechargeable batteries and recharging them overnight, you know,
it's going to make a huge difference to your budget anyway.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I have two more things that I'd like to talk about, and these are both used for creating a different shot. Now, they're quite lightweight. Both of them can fit in my tripod bag, and if I want a bit more creativity on a shot, these will really sort of get me out of a difficult situation. The first is what we call a slider, and I mount my slider onto my tripod, and I can slide and create just a different, slightly different look. Works really well for doing interviews on a second camera on an interview, and also just, you know, when you're in a static situation in a museum or something and you want to try and create a bit of movement. The second, and this is a little bit more heavy, is a crane, a mini crane or a mini jib as they call it. It packs down really small. Again, it goes onto my tripod, which I've already got with me. But this also gives me lots of options for doing these beautiful movements up and down and from the side, which I wouldn't be able to do normally just with a camera.
Right, and these kind of shots, I mean, you don't want to use a lot of them, but having a couple of them can really up the production quality on a piece. And when it's this lightweight, you know, I would definitely take that around with me more often.
And particularly for something that's not, you know, a subject that's not that visually interesting. You're going to do, as I said, a museum piece or something where you know that there's not going to be a lot of action. I certainly wouldn't bring this to a protest or something where I have to be moving and things. But if I've got something that's a little bit deadpan, an interview with somebody who's not doing anything particularly exciting, then having these additional tools will just allow me to get a bit more creative. Okay, so that's it. These are all additional things that you don't have to have, and we must emphasize that concentrating on the story, putting your effort into research, thinking about what you're doing, taking your time to shoot it, you're going to find much better progress than you are with all of these additional gadgets. But the gadgets do allow you to move a bit further forward when it comes to doing shots that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get, particularly in situations where things are not as visual as you'd like them to be.